Hi everyone, Sir Tristan here. I'm coming at you with a first of its kind, a tier list specifically for the Spell Brigade, just kind of like a follow-up to the previous video I posted on the March update, going a bit more in depth on the specific wizards and kind of comparing it, seeing who's the most powerful and least powerful in my opinion, and really discussing why and what I think that could be changed, should be changed, etc. If you have any contentions, you have any issues, you let me know. Tell me what you think because this is really about making the game better, right? And making it a lot more fun to play. It's already really fun, but making it even better. So I'd like to just start off here with Reginald. Now, Reginald has the Astral Orbs spell. And when we're thinking about the power of these wizards and just kind of how I'm going to be assessing them, we need to think about their stats that they have. We also need to think about their signature spell. I mean, aesthetics are, tertiary. If you have one that you like, oh, they look, maybe you put them up or down, but this is a tier list based on strength when completing waves or as a part of a team rather than anything else. So, what do we have here for Reginald? We have 25% spell size on his astral orbs, minus 12% cooldown. That's fairly strong. And his stats increase is 2 to luck and 10% chance to find health, potions, and magnets. Right. So I feel Reginald is fairly strong. I'm going to place him in B tier. Let me just double check his Astral Orb spell. So we have 3 augments for Astral Orbs. The spell casts in bursts, very strong. The projectile split in two. The projectile splitting in two sounds a lot better than it actually is, but we can upgrade it 6 times. Um, so I would say once you get up into the higher ranges, it starts to become a lot more AoE and a lot more useful. And the final augment is one that is given to a lot of wizards, which I think is very weak personally, is that it targets the enemy with the most health and increases damage by 15%. The reason why I think that's weak is because you can compare it to unique or global upgrades, right? So if a unique upgrade is put on a spell, you can get up to 35% damage, right? Or 35% cooldown, which is about the same thing. Or the global upgrade to all of your spells up to 20% damage, right? So 15% is like the third tier or epic version, purple, for your global damage boost, but it's only to one spell. So really it's just an uncommon version of the spell damage for one. So it's very weak in that aspect. So aiming at that enemy with the most health is also somewhat detrimental some of the time, depending on what you need out of your wizard. It's a long ramble, but I'm just getting that out of the way because we're going to be addressing the enemy, aiming at the enemy with the most health augment, I think is kind of weak, but you have to take it sometimes. It's better than nothing. Um, that being said, I'm going to place Reginald B. He might move, but that's where he's going to be right now. I think his spell size is kind of a wash, but it's there. It's better than nothing. The cooldown is very strong. The luck is nice, gives you a bit better upgrades most of the time. And the potion and magnets chance isn't really relevant. The health potions will come and help a little bit here and there, but largely if you're getting hit by enough stuff that the potions matter, focusing that energy into dodging would help you more. Okay, so now that we're done with Reginald here, let's go with Moon Mage. And I think Moon Mage is a great example of a wizard that doesn't have anything wrong with him, right? And by the way, C tier is average for me. C tier is fine. Nothing wrong with C tier. It's just they aren't as strong as the other mages, right? So why do I put Moon Mage in this tier? We have plus 25% spell size. It's a lot more relevant for Moonerang than it is for Astral Orbs because you can go through multiple targets. Plus 12% range, also helpful. You also get your spells and infusions 1 level faster, on top of having a 3% XP gain. So you have your augments, sorry, not your augments, your infusions and your spells 1 level faster. That said, that's not going to make a huge deal. And if anything, getting the spells 1 level faster as you're going to get 3 more spells is going to make it so, yes, you'll do more damage, but you'll have fewer chances to upgrade towards your infusion on your main spell if you're playing in the non-solitary focus game mode. So it's kind of a downside in some ways, unless you really want to do a wide build instead of a stacked build. I would say it's kind of a medium thing. It's good if it's doing what you want, but if you want to focus on the Moonerang, it actually kind of sets you 3 levels behind, if that makes sense. At least to getting your infusion for it, even though you get it 1 level earlier. So I guess it's about 2 levels then. Either way, um, it's fine. XP gain's good. It's a good stat. I just don't think that he does enough that you say wow um, when you're playing him. And I think a big part of that when it comes to um, the Moonerang itself is the augments, right? So augment 1 goes to the furthest point as the spell lingers there, increasing the size and duration by 10%. Again, this is just hitting more enemies. It's not doing more damage. Your spell does critical damage at the furthest point. The critical damage is also increased by 15%. That's pretty good. You can only get that once though, just like the first one. And your spell aims at the enemy at the most health, increasing damage by 15%. Again, I said this before, the 15% base damage, not that great. 15% base critical damage. As we're guaranteed to crit, we can think of it as 15% more damage, but also we could just get a damage upgrade. As we'll see with some of the other wizards, we're going to have a lot more power coming from the augments, and I think that's what makes Moon Mage C tier. I might even put him in D tier. Not that I think he's terrible, but when we compare it to some of these other ones, we have some big changes here. Let's go to wizard number 3, Cavan. A bit more unique of a playstyle, as we have the Rocky Road spell, and we have a pretty interesting set of features on him. We have 33% spell size on the Rocky Road, and plus 8% damage. So I'm already thinking, hey, we have 8% flat damage, spell size. This is one with the Rocky Road where the spell size does matter. And the more enemies you can hit, the more damage you can deal. So it's great for wave clear. Additionally, he has something gain. The actual number is 0.025% XP with when you take damage, like as a percentage of the damage you take. It doesn't sound like a lot, but in testing when I've played this, Cavan's damage is actually not his damage rather. His XP is really nice. It's not broken, but if you're playing on harder difficulties like I do, you can tank a few monsters at the start. You can get a lot of XP right away, leveling you up and giving you a big power boost in the beginning, making that transition into higher levels faster. And in fact, you level up faster with Cavan's passive than you do with Moon Mage's passive, despite them both being XP based. The only downside is you have to take damage. Well, if you're taking damage in a controlled way, you will level up much more times. At a similar break point, I think I was five or 7 levels ahead at a like towards the end. So I mean, I was using it pretty effectively, and I had my I have my full regen, I have my full enchantment. So maybe this is weaker if your account isn't as upgraded. But I'm actually gonna put him in A tier. Maybe that's a bit contentious as he doesn't have anything to help his allies. Um, but the reason why I do is also because of the augments, right? Uh, the spell at the end of the trail occasionally creates an explosion. And I'm not certain, but I think this is based off of the damage rate upgrade. Meaning that if you get more damage rate, you're more likely to have an explosion. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it's just an observation I think I've had there. Meaning that you're getting constant explosions either way, even if that isn't how that works. So he has an explosive AoE spell, it also leaves the trail behind him, constantly dealing damage. Um, and your spell does more damage towards the end of its trail. If you're good at lining it up, you can get a good bit of damage off of that. And you can also see your spell occasionally creates spikes that deal critical damage. And that makes your crit a lot better because you don't need crit chance, you just need crit damage. And you don't even need to upgrade your crit damage to make that good because the base is 70%. So basically, on occasion, you do 70% more damage. So we're in a good stance there. I think that he's pretty strong. The only thing is, I think he falls off a little bit when we get into higher, I'll call them ascensions. So when you have the eternal bond, when you're playing from multiple go throughs and endlessly, the only time he really starts to fall off is because we don't have anything that really makes his damage scale. Right? We have a lot of good damage, but his damage doesn't scale. So that being said, maybe he's closer to B tier. Um, I know Reginald can have these extra orbs, but I've never seen him pop off. Maybe I'll put him in B tier. Maybe that's high end of B tier as we continue forward here. But yeah, I think Kevin's fairly strong. So next we have Sun Mage. Sun Mage with the Solar Pulse. Now let me read out uh, the modifier. We have 33% spell size. I think that's a great change that we see here. The, the spell was always feeling a bit small, so it's nice to have that 33% additional size as his base. 7% dodge chance, 7% move speed on roads and environmental hazards, and minus 25% hitbox size. Right? 7% dodge is good. 7% dodge is good. Um, it gets you closer to getting to like a critical mass of dodge where you do not take damage really, making you much tankier. The 33% spell size makes your spell that is very range limited less range limited, removing one of the key weaknesses of the Solar Pulse spell. Your move speed on roads and environmental hazards is interesting. I've yet to test it, but if I am understanding this correctly, it works on lava, and it works on ice, and it works on obviously roads, and it works on like the brush in the icy area. So, that being said, I think that's pretty good. Hitbox size is also nothing to laugh at. You can get closer and dodge things more effectively. Previously, before the patch, honestly, I put Sun Mage in D tier. But these are all benefits, and they're all good benefits. Let me just check that the augments haven't changed. That might change my placing, but for now, I'll put Sun Mage in B tier. Let's see. Yeah, so we have these changes. Augment 1, your spell converts into healing when hitting teammates or yourself. So, pretty good healing thing. Good aura. Your spell size is increased lower your health is. I always felt this was weird. I don't know why we can't just have a much higher spell size base. Especially if you have the healing thing and you don't have the harmony pack, so you're dealing damage to yourself and allies, so you get the healing. Increasing the size when you're lower health and you're healing yourself means that it gets smaller when your spell is better, which is just such a weird thing. And also, finally, we have this upgrade or augment. You take less damage when there are enemies inside your spell area, which largely is going to be when you're taking damage in general. 20 armor. So if you don't have much base armor, that's pretty good. Mind you, these don't scale up a lot. You kind of get locked out. We can't get a whole bunch of them. So I'm just going to put Sun Mage at bottom of B. Maybe Sun Mage should. There's an argument for C tier, just based off of the Solar Pulse spell. But I think all of the passive stats are really good. 7% dodge is great. The 7% situational move speed is great. The minus 25% hitbox size is great. Everything there, like if you threw that on any other wizard, you'll be really happy about that. So, I think Sun Mage is a solid B tier, up from what I would say is D tier before. Next, we have Sir Ludwig, Fellow Knight. Now, I still have yet to have a full understanding of one of his stats, but I will tell you what I think about it. Uh, First, this is Arcane Broadsword, where he has a couple of augments on that, being he has, here's Ludwig, 25% spell size and minus 8% cooldown. The biggest thing about Ludwig is his broadsword spell. It always goes clockwise, which bothers me personally. You can definitely play around it, but it's just something I don't enjoy. That's not going to factor into the rating here, but personally, it's not for me. But having more spell size and cooldown makes the broadsword a lot stronger. Broadsword has good base damage, and it's AoE right off the bat. You can be very secure when you have this spell, in it, especially the first ascension, before you go and fight the boss the first time. But there's some changes in his stats, and I think they're really bad. He has plus 12 armor, which is good. I wouldn't say amazing, but it's good. But we have this minus 10% move speed. So I was just talking about how it's great that Sun Mage has occasional move speed buffs. This is a move speed nerf, and it's stronger. And there's nothing helping you out with that. That's crippling. That's so bad. Like, if you don't have enough damage to kill the monsters that are around you, you can't run away. And as I'll get to on a future tier list, there is another thing in this game that lowers your move speed, and it will kill you on runs if you pick it up, a certain combination. That being said, minus 10% base is really bad. And we also have plus 25% hitbox size, so you're easy to hit in two ways. And this game, the biggest thing, in my opinion, that you need to focus on, particularly when playing solo, is not getting hit, which is by dodging attacks or positioning properly, managing when it's appropriate to get hit or take a hit and die so that you can respawn, and just in general spacing. Trying to hit enemies with your abilities without being hit, kiting them. You can't do that when you're bigger and when you move slower. Nothing there helps you. If his spell size was a lot larger, maybe that could make up for it. But for now, I think Ludwig before was maybe even, would it be A tier? Maybe A tier. Just he was so strong. He was so strong, and I still think that his spell is just so much better than Moon Mages and Sun Mages, but that move speed and hitbox size I feel like was going to be really punishing. I'll put him in B tier, a low end of B tier. Let me just check that the augments. So we have greatly increased in size, but moves more slowly. Does more damage when standing still. Oh, there's another problem. Yeah, so this is something I wanted to mention here on the Arcane Broadsword, and we'll get into this more when we talk about the spells themselves in a later video. Arcane Broadsword, your spell is an augment. Your spell deals more damage when standing still. Yes, you can do that. Fine. 25% damage, you can get up to 100% damage, which is significant. But we need to think again, we're moving 10% slower, and we're 25% larger. Now we're doing that on top of standing still. I mean, we can get away with this. The bigger size with the one augment and the increasing over size augment is going to matter, right? We can upgrade the increase in spell size by up to 3 times, which is going to, it doesn't say here on the wiki, but I'm pretty sure it's something like 25% larger each time, which is significant. You can get pretty big, you can hit a lot of enemies. The other thing is if you're standing still, of course, you can take damage. And when we get to higher ascensions, taking damage is not something you can just out heal, right? You can't just choose to tank damage unless maybe you have a dedicated healer and you're playing multi, but solo, that's a huge issue. So I'm going to put him in B tier. Maybe he deserves to be higher than Sun Mage here, and I think I will. But I think Ludwig has fallen down with those changes. I think he was a solid A before, but now not so much. Now we have Campanelli, the Jester, with the Phantom Blades spell. Now Campanelli, Campanelli. We have 4 augments, and I'm talking about the augments first because a lot of Campanelli's effectiveness is from the spells, from the Phantom Blade spell. First augment, your spell converts into healing when hitting teammates or yourself. Okay, nice. It's on a few mages, but nice. Your spell also casts behind you. Okay, nice. So those are one-off augments. What else? Your spell casts an additional projectile. Maximum upgrades of 6. So it casts behind you. So it doubles the number of projectiles. Not that all of them hit all the time, but double the projectiles. You can upgrade it 6 times to shoot an additional wave of projectiles. 6. And as said here, total projectiles is 9. And it's casts in bursts. This is very, very strong. Very, very strong. Just off of the augments alone, and Phantom Blade is a bit weak early game. I will say that. But I think he's our first S tier. And the reason why is because Phantom Blades and the Phantom Blade augments are so strong. It's crazy. You have tons of damage and tons of cast. The only issue is the spell doesn't go through anything. Right? It doesn't go through. It hits the first enemy and then stops. So you have a lot of damage output. You can really take down one enemy, but maybe the wave clear isn't quite there. But we do have some healing ourselves and allies on top of that. So he gets to be a healer and a very high damage threat. We also have the modifications on him, which I'm covering last because I think they're less relevant, but still all good, and it's why he's S tier and not A, is he has 25% spell size on his Phantom Blades and minus 12% cooldown, so it's just better, right? Also 10% move speed, so you're able to maneuver better. 10% move speed I think is great. I wouldn't say excellent, but great. Usually you'll pick up some move speed buffs just so that you don't get overwhelmed and you can survive through waves until you can have your spells be powerful enough to do anything. And I don't have to pick that up on Campanelli. It's already there. And I can last a little bit longer, pick up a few more damage upgrades before I need to get more move speed. So I think that's amazing. You can think of move speed as health and regen because that's what you don't have to do. So I think, especially because he has no negatives and only positives, and his spell is so strong, S tier, first S tier. Next we have Hattie, and I'll be honest, I haven't played a ton with Hattie, but I'll try to give a little bit of an insight, because I have seen some different things, and you can tell some things by what the stats and spell does. So the spell is Rune Burst, right? And our augments for Rune Burst are casting in a rotating pattern, which is kind of irrelevant. Your spells cast an additional projectile, up to 6 upgrades for 10 total, and your spell casts a burst, so sets of 3. So pretty good damage threat for the augments, right? Let's see what the signature spell modifiers are. 20% spell size, a bit easier to hit. 12% duration. All right. 8% cooldown, minus 8%. I do believe, let me check here, Rune Blast. I believe it pierces through. It's been a while. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I believe it pierces through with the Rune Blast. So we have a good damage threat, really good damage threat. We also have plus 6% damage. Nice, not great, but nice. But we also have 2 negatives. I don't know why the patch has so many negatives. And they're not like every wizard has a negative too. It's like some of them do and some of them don't. And Hattie's one that does have a negative. 2 of them. Minus 300 max health. Base is 1200, so you're losing a quarter of your max health base. And 15% more vulnerable to elemental damage. I think that's only allied damage. I'm struggling to think of elemental damage. Maybe like the little fire shots from the firebugs. somebody let me know. So, but you take random extra elemental damage. Um, I have an idea about that. If it's on a healing spell from an ally, maybe that means that you get healed more. If not, maybe that could be a really cool feature to put in from the devs. So that Hattie has this sort of, I can be healed by, say, Campanelli. If he takes an elemental fire, it burns me for extra healing. And that's 15% more when we're playing without the Harmony Pact. Means that I heal 15% more. I think that could be pretty cool. But as it currently stands, it's just a negative. So we're kind of basing it off of Rune Blasts and the spell size duration cooldown buffs and the 6% damage. 6% damage is nice. I think that Rune Blast is strong enough to put Hattie in A tier. I've seen some people do some things with Hattie. I just don't think. I think Hattie's like a weaker Campanelli in many ways. I could be wrong there, but these negatives are pretty significant. Uh, Wizard King. Wizard King. So, Wizard King has Magic Missile. 20% duration bonus, 8% cooldown, 8% spell size, and his base passive is 10% crit chance. Let me double check Magic Missile again. Your spell explodes at the end of its lifetime. It splits in two for a max of 6 upgrades when it hits, and it aims at the enemy with the most health. The range is also increased with that modifier, not damage, by 22%. So let's evaluate the modifiers. I'd say like the base things. We have the signature spell, 20% duration. Magic Missile is a piercing spell and it lingers, so it's kind of giving you some extra damage towards swarms. 8% cooldown means you're getting more casts. 8% spell size means you're hitting more. All good. All very good. 10% crit chance is basically just a little bit more damage. It's not. So unfortunately, because we have our what was the calculation? Bring out a calculator here. I was trying to do this in the other video. So because we have 170 base, yeah, you can pick up crit, but this is just for point of argument. We're essentially doing 70% more damage when we crit, right? So if we increase our crit chance by 10%, it's like increasing our chance to do 70% more damage by 10%, right? So we can see that as 0.10 times that number, which means that we're going to have like a 7% increase in damage, roughly. So it's not bad. It's not bad. 7% increase in damage, effectively. We do have a few good augments, but nothing really stands out about Wizard King. And I think the big thing that makes this character not feel like he's really broken or better than any of the other mages is that Magic Missile, while it's a cool spell, the splitting into two and exploding just doesn't get off the ground, I find. It just doesn't do enough. You think that splitting in two would be like crazy because they'd be like, okay, it's hitting everything and it's but the angles that it goes at just don't do anything in my experience. It's a lot like Reginald, right? They both have like this same effect. I'd say Reginald is a little better because it casts spells in bursts, right? He's split into yeah, because like Reginald will be a bit better at fighting the boss, right? Whereas Wizard King doesn't have the luxury of casting it multiple times. And and I'm saying this, and maybe he's lower. Maybe he's like Moon Mage. No, I think maybe it's controversial to put on. No, he has the damage bonus. I'll put him here. Put him in bottom of B tier. It's just because Magic Missile is such a slow spell. You have to think not all the spells have the same base capabilities, so these modifiers don't do the same thing. Magic Missile is a very slow spell, base 2.2 seconds. Um, it's not a ton of damage either. It is good, but it's not a ton of damage. It does scale. It's not bad, but like I really wish that Magic Missile was better. Maybe if the projectiles split into two and seek the nearest enemy, something like that. And also, spell aiming at the enemy at the most health and the base range increasing by 22%. I would actually probably consider not taking that if I saw that. I would take any damage or anything like that instead, personally. But I don't think he's bad. I think he's solid. So just down to our last three mages here, all of which got a change in the recent patch. Of course, one didn't even exist. But let's go with Aldrich, our staff boy. Now he has Aether Beam, of course, and he has 8% damage on it, minus 4% cooldown, which isn't a lot. It's kind of weird to have 4%. Can you not give my boy 10? What do you have here? 60% revive speed. Largely irrelevant. Like, if you're able to get into the spot to revive them, it's usually not a matter of, oh, I couldn't. I mean, it'll be nice. I can imagine a few clutch moments, but you also have to think it's not going to be make or break most of the time. But it's not bad. Health regen +1. So I commented about this in my other video. Health regen needs to be a lot stronger to be worth anything when you're playing on higher difficulties. It's just not good enough. One health regen used to be on Sun Mage, and it's so bad. Let me double check the health regen stat here if I can find it. I believe it's once every 2 seconds. I can't find anything on it. Take my word for it. We're playing game. You'll know what I mean. It's very slow, and even if it was once every second, 1 health, it's still ridiculously bad. We have 1200 health on any individual character. So that's 1200 seconds, assuming it's not 2 seconds, for your passive to heal you to full. Okay, so we're spending, a large portion of our playtime just to heal up after a few hits from that. I'm not saying that it makes it bad. It's a benefit. It's definitely there. But the health regen needs to be in a number closer to 4 or higher, in my opinion, to do anything. 1 is like nothing. 1 might as well not be there. The number of games that you'll win based off of having 1 health extra regen and the same number will be close to 0. Mind that we do have plus 25% heal efficiency, and I don't know if that benefits your regen. If it does, that's great. But it importantly is focused on his healing beam, right? We're increasing his it converts to healing when hitting yourself or teammates. All right, so we're kind of getting that healing effect like Sun Mage. Your spell casts an additional projectile up to 7. Okay, right? And it aims at the enemy with the most health. Again, I hate that one so much, but it is a thing. Aldrich is support. 100. You can't make me any other argument. Plus 20%. Actually, is this like a hidden effect? Hold on. Seeing something here in the wiki. Plus 20% spell damage per upgrade split among all projectiles. Is that on the ejecta? Oh, it's also increasing the damage by 20%. Is Eldrick? Maybe I have to reorganize this list a little bit. Aldrich as a support character and as a healer that's only healing. I have to play with it to know, because these are a lot of changes and I have yet to play with other people. I kind of have an issue with the matchmaking system, so I mostly play solo. Maybe it's A. Maybe it's A, and maybe Cavan is A. Maybe Reginald is A. No, I think original B. I think this is the way it needs to look. I'll have to play, but if it's 20% per additional projectile upgrade, we do have the issue of it. Of course, it doesn't pierce through, so it only hits 7 targets at once, whereas many of these other wizards can hit multiple targets at once. But 20% per upgrade up to 7, up to 104, 120%, and we can heal allies. He's gonna be a really great dedicated healer. I would guess the best dedicated healer in the game. And because of that, he has a utility in multiplayer games that the other ones just can't do. Campanelli, of course, has damage on top of being a probably pretty comparable healer, but again, isn't as good as Campanelli, but I think he's like a better Sun Mage in terms of healing. And lastly is my personal favorite, mostly because he's, in my opinion, busted. And it doesn't look like much when you look at his stuff. This is Star Mage. You know what Star Mage starts with? S. S is for S tier. Star Mage tier. He's at the top. He's the best. You know how in his description as lore, he says that he has dominion over the stars, the universe is cosmic power, and everything else. And he also loves to point out that he's better than Sun Mage because he is. He is that guy. Star Mage is the most powerful wizard, hands down, in terms of damage. It's not even a competition. Not early game. He scales. Okay? I'm not talking about early game. Early game, he's terrible. But if you can dodge and you can make use of the exploding bugs and you can survive the early waves, you will have the most powerful wizard. And it comes down to a few things. Number one, his signature spell has a modifier now that made him even more powerful. I think it was the best before this patch. I think he's the best after. Minus 12% cooldown. Great. Base makes him deal a lot more damage. Plus 15% elemental damage. So this further incentivizes you to take either lightning or fire, and it makes it deal 15% more damage. Which is already what you were basically taking most of the time. But this is the thing, if you guys haven't played Star Mage, we have 2 augments that make it super strong. The first one is that it explodes at the end of its lifetime. It's a weird way of wording it, it just explodes when it hits. So Star hits and explodes. That means that it sends off the lightning to everything nearby if you have lightning or fire, right? What else? It casts an additional projectile up to 7. And it's a low base spell cooldown. And he reduces the cooldown at base. So 7 stars can be cast simultaneously. It auto targets, so you just need to be somewhat close. And it explodes at the end of its lifetime. We have the really bad, your spell aims at the enemy with most health, dealing 15% more damage. Oh, and as we have a note here, explosions deal 50% of the spell's damage. Crit does not affect the explosion damage. That's good to know. Doesn't matter. He has so much damage, it's insane. I was playing a duo game with someone. They were playing Campanelli. I was playing Star Mage. The player on Campanelli had a really good build, right? But what would happen is I would walk to a different part of the map to not take that person's kills so they could play their build. I would walk over and it was a thunderstorm raining down. I would like annihilate all of the enemies as I walk through. He's the best. No argument. If you've actually played him, you know. He's crazy. Um so yeah, Star Mage is S tier. I don't think he needs to be nerfed because he has that weak early game. It's the only thing that you could ever argue me A tier is because he has a weak early game. But you know, for playing multiple ascensions, he's the strongest. Last but certainly not least is the new Mage, Maggie, or maybe you want to call her Magi. I don't know. What is this? So This is the Bird Mage. She has the Aurora Wing spell, and I have played some with her since the release. We have knows the location of objectives faster. It says faster. I think it's right away. Knows the location of health potions, magnets, and relics. So the main thing is that this character knows where things are, and that's useful information. It's certainly better than negatives, but it's more a convenience thing. And if you have, say, for a 2 to 4 player game, you have 2 to 4 times the map vision. So finding these fast isn't really a problem if you're talking to people. Um, Solo, it's somewhat useful, but when I played it, it didn't feel excellent. It just felt nice to have. And nice to have isn't as good as nice or good. So I'm just gonna have to say it's just kind of a wash. I would say that puts her in C tier to base. Aurora Wings is minus 12% cooldown. Okay, maybe it's put in here. Let's read the Aurora Wings spell because I need to familiarize myself with it a bit more. Command the birds to flare on the battlefield, striking multiple targets. Base spell cooldown of 3 seconds and long spell range. Right. And just to remind myself, the augments here, spell converts into healing when hitting yourself or allies. Your spell hits an additional target up to 6 and explodes. So those are all good. And if I remember when my gameplay, when I did the patch review video, she felt pretty good. I beat max difficulty on Pyrestorm Pit first time while doing a video. So something was going on that makes this good. And I think it's her spell. Is her spell A tier? Maybe. Maybe her spell puts her in A tier. It felt pretty strong. And maybe that's part of the balance that the people making the game, you know, that they were deciding on. Maybe they're thinking, hey, the spell is so strong when it's upgraded that she can't have too much in terms of stats. But she didn't feel overwhelming. She didn't feel as powerful damage wise as some of these other wizards. It just felt like it felt decent, felt good, not Star Mage. So, I mean, nothing Star Mage. But yeah, that's my tier list for now. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it with you guys. You can tell me what you think. I know it's a bit longer of a video. I like to ramble about these things, but I like to talk about these things. You tell me. I don't think anything hits D tier. Do you think anything's D tier? Do you think I didn't put something in S tier that needs to be there? I think it's a pretty balanced list, and I think this is pretty accurate to how good they are. But you let me know. You subscribe to my video. You like my video, and go watch my other video. Have a good one.